Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And joined today by Jim. Jim, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me here. It's great to be on the show. My name is Jim Kalbach. I'm the chief evangelist at Mural. Mural is one of the leading online whiteboard solutions. We also have a capability called Luma, which is a way to scale new ways of working across your organization as well, too. So in addition to the whiteboard, we also have a certification and new ways of working capability. I've been with the company for 10 years. But my background is in design and innovation, and I'm also known for a couple of books that I wrote, one on jobs to be done and the other one on mapping experiences.
So thank you, Jim. And today we'll dive deeper into generative AI, how Mural is adopting it internally and also bringing it to clients. Let's talk about internally first.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the journey more broadly that Mural has been on with generative AI, and then we'll dig deeper into various elements of it.
Yeah, sure. I think what was it at the end of 2023 when ChatGPT kind of opened its doors, there was obviously a lot of talk about Gen AI and how it was going to be integrated into work. As a startup or as a relatively small company, so Mural has what, 400 employees, 500 employees, or something like that. We do have very high security standards here. Mostly because of our enterprise customers. So that trickles down to what we can and can't do. But I think as a whole, as a company, we embraced AI internally pretty quickly,
Hmm.
very quickly. And one thing that we did is we have our own Mural approved AI chatbot that we can use. That's been helpful, across the organization.
Mhm.
For the most part, there are some folks that are still hesitant to
Mhm.
use AI, but as a young tech-oriented company, we embraced it fairly quickly, and we have several touch points in like my daily experience are kind of backed with some AI capabilities that we've embraced and brought
Mhm.
into our workflows fairly quickly, like I mentioned.
So let's talk about that, your typical workday, and
Yeah.
what kind of generative AI elements are actually present in that typical workday.
Right. We use tools like Slack and email for a lot of communication. We use the Gmail, the Google Suite for documents and email. And there are AI capabilities built in there to
Mhm.
help write emails, to help summarize emails, and things like that. In Slack, there's also some AI capabilities that Slack is offering now. One of them, it's not really generative AI, but it can help summarize conversations across the
Mhm.
entire Slack universe. I would say we're hyper users of Slack here. So there's a lot of diffusion of conversations across the
Mhm.
organization. I mean, as a completely remote company, it's great that we have Slack as a platform to have those conversations. The problem then is how do you know what's going on and what you
Mhm.
might have missed? And some of the AI summaries and things that the features that Slack has help with that, and even requests. So we have a request system on Slack that will, if you ask a question, let's say we have a finance channel where I can ask my finance team a question. It'll attempt to answer it based on previous Slack conversations, right? So there's
Mhm.
AI built into that experience. Like I mentioned, we do have our own AI chatbot, which I just consulted today, this morning. I was writing a description of a workshop, and I pretty much wrote the whole thing. I knew what I wanted to say, but then there is spell check and
Yeah.
typos. Very often AI can help flesh it out or help formulate things a little bit better. So after I
Mhm.
created my draft, I put it in there, and it improved it, I have to say. And I took that back out, and then that was the description of the workshop that I was doing. So, basically from, when I get up and start to communicate with the team, and then even doing my own work, particularly when it's composing and writing and very text-based information, that's obviously where Gen AI plays a big role in work these days.
Mhm. Now, you told me some people are, you're clearly a power user. You told me
Yeah.
some people are hesitant about using it. Why do you think
Yeah.
they're hesitant?
I think for a couple of reasons. One is I think there's still, I don't know if this is true. I think, yeah, it's still out there. There's kind of I don't want to describe it as an uncanny valley, but I think there's still a little bit of, people are a little bit creeped out about it, just
Mm.
how can it do that so quickly? But then I think underlying that to some degree is also just a sense of, giving data away, or how much do I have to tell this machine about my work and who I am and what I'm doing? And
Mm.
it seems like that encroaches on confidentiality and privacy and personal space almost.
Mhm.
It's almost like, when somebody stands too close to you and talks too close to you, and they're in, I think AI just got too close to a couple people, and they're like, wait a minute, I don't want to tell computers everything now here, right?
Mm.
So I think there's a hesitance from that kind of perspective.
So, do you think it's a hesitance around personal space, or do you think people are concerned about, oh, will AI replace me if I give it too much information, or is it a privacy
Yeah.
concern? Like, where do you think that's coming from?
Yeah, I think I think on the one hand, it's a privacy concern, but I do think there is a concern. There's a real concern out there that AI can replace people, right? And we're seeing
Mhm.
that in the
Yeah,
market. I'm sure you're
we
aware of
are.
those headlines. You've probably written some of the
Yes.
headlines I'm reading about, people cutting jobs or not hiring or even laying off
Mhm.
people, right? Because I forget the latest one where that was the case. I can't think.
Workday, there was something
Workday,
at
yes, that's the one
Workday.
that I had in mind, right? Workday was it 1,800 developers, I think, right? So there's a real concern that, and I think that's part of the creepiness. Like, it's so
Mhm.
new and it's so powerful. And by the way, we're just on the beginning of our AI
We
Gen
are.
experience here, right? And it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, if that's happening now, like, wait, what does that mean? Like, so I think the uncertainty that people have around AI, and we can take it back to, uncertainty for your own job,
Yep.
right? That what emotions does uncertainty drive
Mhm.
in your then expressed attitude towards AI? And some people with that uncertainty, along with some of the creepiness they might perceive, there's a hesitancy there. I don't want to do too much. I don't want to give
Mm.
it too much, and that kind of thing. Yeah,
That makes sense. Now,
yeah,
when generative AI was rolled out, were there policies developed? Did Mural
yeah,
say this is what you do, this is what you don't do? Or was it
yeah,
generally like play around with it and figure out what works best? Like, what
yeah,
was the general approach at Mural structurally,
yeah.
policy-wise, to generative AI adoption?
That's a good question. We do have a policy now. Again, we're certified, for security,
Yeah.
cloud-based security things and that. So we did have a policy, but very, very early on, we came out with a clear policy very, very early on, but it was very much to the side of go experiment, use this in your work,
Hmm.
figure out what you can do. And I know I've heard of our legal team, for instance, again, lots of writing, lots of documents, lots of legal documents, using AI powered capabilities to help them with their legal work, for instance.
Hmm. Yeah.
That happened very, very quickly, particularly relative to other companies that who we work with, our customers, for instance.
Yeah.
We work with a lot of customers that still they're still forming their AI policy. They don't
Hmm.
have access to AI through their firewalls and things like that. And, I'm going back, a year and a half now where we were already had very, very open and liberal access to AI, Gen AI. Yeah.
Hmm. Where did that initiative to have that policy come from? Did it come from the CIO, the IT? Did it come from HR? Where
Yeah.
was the hub of AI policy formulation and implementation?
Yeah, it was more from the CIO and in
Mhm.
particular our security team.
Hmm.
because, like I said, as a cloud-based software application, we're SOC 2 level 2 compliant, which our
Hmm.
customers want to see. That's a compliance
Definitely.
level for cloud-based applications, and that has obviously implications on the cloud-based technology that we use and the database and the servers and things like that. But it also has implications on the employees as well
Hmm.
too. And even what my laptop can do and can't do
Hmm.
is regulated to some degree from those compliance and security policies. So to be able to walk in, to go to our customers and say, no, we're a secure platform. I think, again, when AI came out, as a young tech company, we immediately saw the value of it and wanted it there. But I think some of those the policies were kind of more driven from the CIO and compliance teams.
How is information about AI shared within the company? Like you figure out,
Yeah.
okay, I can use it to write a workshop. It's funny that you're talking about a workshop. I was also today formulating a workshop with AI. So what I did was, oh, I have templates for a number of workshops I give. But this organization, the Massachusetts SHRM Council, wanted me to have learning objectives. So I fed it my description and it spit
Yep.
out learning objectives.
Yep.
So I think that's another kind of, oh, I'm like,
Yep.
okay, that's a cool use case. I can
Yep.
just, use the same descriptions templates and I can customize it to each one. How do you figure out use cases and how do you
Yeah.
share best practices across the organization?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if we share best practices that much. Hmm. Yeah, I guess there's no formal program around
Okay.
what you just asked for. I think again we're hyper users of Slack, and I'm connected with my employees, with my
Mhm.
colleagues here all the time, and it's through the day-to-day interactions that somebody will say, "Hey,
Mhm.
I did that over here or over
Okay.
here," or we're in a brainstorming session ourselves. Speaking of descriptions, I just
Mhm.
mentioned using that to write my description, and we'll do that. So there's a couple of different ways that you can think about using AI. One is that kind of like help me improve what I already have some bullet points,
Yeah.
write some more around it, help me improve that. But it can also be, I mean, this is true Gen AI, where you say, I'm running this workshop and I need to think of 4 learning objectives, and it can actually generate net new things, not just
Mhm.
correct what you gave it, net new things, right? So those things kind of happen, and it's a little bit more, I don't want to say haphazard, but not as structured or programmatic in terms of the
Mhm.
sharing of what we're doing.
And do you have any training on generative AI, or is it just again like everyone do what they want, or is there some training on
We
generative AI,
had
how to use it?
Well, not on how to use it. We had some AI around the privacy and compliance side of
Ah.
it. Like
Mhm.
what type of data shouldn't we put in there, and that we should use
Mhm.
that sanctioned bot when we're here at work with our work email addresses, and when we're
Mhm.
signed in and everything, use that one. But we didn't get any training about prompt engineering or
Mhm.
tips and tricks and things like that. For me personally, it's something that I've explored,
Yeah.
just how to write a prompt and then thinking about use cases and scenarios where it could help me. And sometimes I forget, and my colleagues are like, we're in the middle of a discussion, and they'll go, "Oh, here's what AI just said," and I was like, "Why didn't I think to go to AI for
Yeah.
that question?" So I think it's just through exposure and using it that you start to learn more and more tricks and use cases and
Mhm.
situations where it would be helpful in a variety of different ways, either improving or generating new
Mhm.
things or what have you.
Yeah, I've helped a number of tech companies implement it, and they definitely find that having training on AI, like you're saying, like, oh, I didn't even think to use that, helps people be quite a bit more productive
Mhm.
than sharing use cases. Having a structured way to share use case across the organization helps them be quite a bit more productive. And also having, so you mentioned sometimes, oh, somebody finds something and then they share to others. Peer
Yeah.
mentor and
Mhm. Mhm.
is can be quite helpful. Like people who
Yeah.
are generative AI champions, excited about it,
Yeah.
helping others in a structured way. So those might be some things to think about. I've seen those
Yeah.
be quite helpful elsewhere.
That's good. And on the mentoring side of things, as you were talking, what came to mind is that I very often help our customers understand the AI capabilities that we have in our tool. And I
Hmm.
think me personally, where I've learned a lot about AI is actually helping others think about it.
Hmm.
Maybe who are, starting from scratch or at an earlier stage than I am. And every time I get exposed to a situation where I'm trying to teach a customer how to do that, I think I learn a little more as well too. So being the
Yeah,
mentor, so to speak, I learn. Yeah.
absolutely. Both peer mentors and mentees learn. So let's
Yeah, right.
transition to the AI capabilities within Mural itself. Tell me a little bit more about that. What kind of
Sure.
AI capabilities do you have within Mural?
Yeah, we moved pretty quickly to integrate Gen AI into our platform. And again, Mural is a visual collaboration platform, often described as a whiteboard. You can access it right through your browser, so you don't need an install, and it's all
Mhm.
cloud-based information there. Multiple people can collaborate in this canvas. It's basically a board that you zoom in and out of, a lot like Google Maps, but it's blank. And the map is your thoughts and your ideas, which you can then put into this canvas in a variety of ways. There are shapes and text boxes and connectors and things like that, but there's also images and links and documents and files and a range of formats and elements that you can add to this canvas. Generally, Mural, I mean, there's so many use cases that I've seen and can talk
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
where having a whiteboard comes into play. But generally, if we kind of zoom way out, it's kind of around, it's best suited for planning the plan or sorting
Mm.
out something that's otherwise chaotic, right? So the typical use case is brainstorming, right? Is, hey, we have this challenge and we need to collect ideas and make sense out of them. You can do that in Mural. But it's more than that. It's also about, if you think about agile sprint planning or something like that, where you have requirements and a backlog. And great, I have tools to manage those, but I need to see them all at once before we create our next,
Mhm.
quarterly plan, right? And that's why I call it planning the plan, because it's Murals is strongest at the kind of the upfront, the fuzzy upfront stages where there is a little bit of uncertainty, or you have to bring multiple perspectives together and harmonize them, or you don't know what you know until it's out on the board. In those kinds of modes of more discovery mode rather than a delivery mode of thinking, right? In those modes, Mural is very helpful. So when we think about that, it's a visual collaboration tool that's really good for generating and organizing ideas and making structure out of chaos. There's so many ways that we can imagine AI being helpful to
Mhm.
us. For instance, we have a mind mapping capability where I can create a node and I can type whatever theme or topic is of interest to me, and then there's a function where I can get the what do they call those, the leaves of a mind map very quickly, and I can type in my sub ideas and my sub ideas, and you end up with a big mind map. Well, if you think about AI, if I have a node in my mind map, I can say generate 5 ideas for me around that node, and it'll do it
Mm.
automatically and visually on the canvas for you, right?
Nice.
And then you can take a node that it generated and say, give me 10 ideas on that one, right? So this idea of helping you complete or flesh out
Mm.
your idea generation, your sense making activities. That's just one example. But it's very powerful in that moment. Uh, when we think about the capabilities of Gen AI. But then the difference for me though is pairing that with the visual collaboration
Mhm.
platform, right? Because I don't know about you, but for me, when ChatGPT came out, my beard is gray enough that I remember the days when
Mhm.
we had like command line computing,
Yeah.
right? Like Unix and things like that. And I'm like, wait, why do I feel like I'm in the 1990s here? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I feel like I'm talking to a computer through command lines, right? But with a collaboration platform like Mural, where it's non-linear and spatial and visual, it kind of makes, for me, it makes AI like a GUI, right?
Mm.
Because I can interact with information in
Yeah.
a nonlinear order. I could take this node and then jump over to that node and say generate more ideas for me. In that sense, so that's one thing is
Mhm.
generating ideas. The other one is summarizing.
Mhm.
Very often brainstorming sessions and these types of interactions and collaboration that you have with your colleagues that generate a lot of ideas and content. Then it's hard to, how do I make sense of this and like summarize it? So in Mural, you can select a bunch of sticky notes and then interact with AI and say, summarize these sticky notes for me, right? And it'll do
Mm.
it in text. So
Nice.
that's really, really helpful because, if you think about it, if I think about the journey is we want to discover and explore ideas and then decide on the ones we want to move forward. And then we deliver something just at a super high level of getting some value to customers in a broad stroke process, right? In that upfront discovery stage, right? There's always something that comes after that. Like I have to
Mhm.
communicate the findings of the group to another stakeholder, to another team. So this summary is a great way to make sense of chaos, or not
Mhm.
chaos, but nonlinear thinking. The other thing we have is a clustering feature.
Okay.
Again, if you have a lot of ideas and you want to see what are the categories, what are the themes that emerge, you can select those sticky notes and cluster them. But the thing I'm actually most excited, so those are some of the basic touch points of AI inside of Mural. The thing that I'm actually more fascinated with and using quite a bit these days myself, I have to admit, is we have a chat on the side.
Mhm.
And it's also aware of the board and the
Okay.
sticky notes on the board. So I can select some sticky notes and then go over to the chat and ask it to manipulate those in some way.
Oh.
One thing I did the other day, because Mural is not like a spreadsheet, right? It's not like Excel where I have
Mhm.
columns and rows. And of course, in spreadsheets, you can have a formula so that if I have, prices or data in one column, it'll sum it up for me, right?
Mhm.
We don't really have that notion in Mural of
Sure.
summing things up, right? But you very often want to do that. So I had a bunch of sticky notes and they had dollar signs in them, right? They were accounts that I was working with and they had the account values in
Mhm.
there, right? I selected them and I said, please sum up the dollar signs across these sticky notes. And they were different sizes and different colors and things like that. But it did it. It went in and it found all those
Oh.
dollar signs and then it summed it up for me. I was like, wow, that was really quick. I don't even need a
Hmm.
spreadsheet now. So it obviated my need for a spreadsheet in that
Oh,
moment.
nice.
But the point I want to make though is that it's
Yeah.
aware of the board. And then the last command I gave it was, please add the sum on a new sticky note in the
Mhm.
Mural canvas. And so it actually added net new
Mm.
content back onto my board, right? Which now you're starting to think, well, what can I do from there? And there's
Mhm.
so many interesting things. Like you could, the one quick demo that I saw was generate a list of the past 10 vice presidents, right? And then it went out and generated sticky notes on the Mural canvas, past 10 presidents. Then you select them and you say, please color the ones that are Republicans as red and the ones that are Democrat as blue. And it colors the ones that
Mhm.
are Democrats as red and blue. Now I went from a list of vice presidents to two visual clusters of those
Mhm.
presidents that I can then move around and interact with in a different way. And wherever I'm going, I can then go back to the chat and ask to help me do that. So I guess I hope I made a good point here. I hope you were able to follow me here. But
Yeah.
it does for me is it makes a Gen AI, it gives it a GUI almost on top of it, where I
Mhm.
now have this information and I'm going back and forth between my visual information and the Gen AI, and I'm not just typing command after command, if that makes sense.
Oh, that sounds really cool. But I
Yeah,
imagine customers can be confused by that. So what
yeah,
have you done to help customers understand and build trust? This
yeah,
must
yeah,
be uncanny. You mentioned the idea
yeah,
of
yeah,
uncanny valley earlier.
yeah,
It must be
yeah,
really uncanny. So
yeah.
what have you done to help customers
It
get
can
over
be
the uncanniness
uncanny.
of it?
Yeah, so we have all kinds of programs around awareness, but then also around use and use cases, things like that. Of course, we have customer success managers as well
Mhm.
who work directly with customers, so we're even able to kind of tailor some of that enablement and messaging that we do. In my experience so far, I've introduced Mural AI capabilities to customers now for the past year. Most of them are kind of stunned and inspired by what it can
Hmm.
do. I haven't seen anybody be really confused yet.
Mhm.
Uh, but that doesn't mean, to your point, though, it's a good question because that doesn't mean they know how to drive it or they know
Yeah.
how their data in a mural canvas would be able to be
Mhm.
enhanced or strengthened through the Gen AI. So there still is an imagination gap there that we're
Yeah.
trying to bridge, right, with Gen AI.
What kind of uptake are you seeing among customers with using generative AI
Yeah,
capabilities?
yeah. It's really varied. As a remote collaboration tool, a lot of companies who have distributed workforces are attracted to Mural. What type of companies are those? Big corporations,
Sure.
IBM, SAP, offices around the world, even banks and consultancies like EY and Accenture and things like that. So we do work with a lot of large enterprise customers and banks and insurance companies and things like that. And it's interesting because when we rolled out Gen AI, we were like, okay, this is at first, right? It's a lot much more liberal spreading around of it. But at first, we're like,
Mhm.
this is only for our enterprise customers. Now, if you think about the companies that I just named, a big bank and a big consultancy, they're going to be like, no, 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 no. This that we need to evaluate this for 6 months. We need to come up
Mm.
with our own policies. So it was exactly the large enterprises that were the slower adopters of
Mm.
the AI capability in Mural, basically because they said you got to be compliant with us, and you
Ah,
got to wait for us to catch up to our own policies because a lot of them are still formulating policies around it,
sure.
right? So it was more of the credit card users and the students and the smaller companies that were using our Gen AI capability. But now we're working with most all of our customers, even the ones with the toughest security around Gen AI. We're working with them to get that capability out to their customers, and
Mm.
we're partners with Microsoft, so we're actually in Copilot. So if you have
Mm.
Mural
Nice.
and the what is it, the 360 suite that's enabled by
Mhm.
Copilot, and you invoke a search across, you want to look at your content using Copilot, for instance, Mural can be included in that search if you're a Microsoft customer.
I wonder, do people have more concerns about hallucination and bias when it's like a visual versus just when it's textual? Have you heard about that? I'm curious if
No,
that's
I
like
haven't
an
heard of. What,
issue.
what do you think? Can you say, well, what's your hunch there?
I just don't know. I'm wondering if
Okay,
people
yeah,
are like, oh,
yeah,
this is more unusual than I thought. Like, what kind of hallucinations might
I
there
say,
be? Like, if you say,
yeah,
place a note uh, and put some
yeah,
information into the note, there
yeah.
are two failure modes that can be there. You can have a visual failure where it might,
Yes,
do the wrong thing with
yes,
placement, and
yes,
you can have content failure that would be in the
correct,
note.
correct. That is a great question. I think you're ahead of where we are right now. I haven't seen any bias one way or the other, um, because of the visual nature of it. Again, my experience introducing Mural's AI capability has been overwhelmingly positive and inspiring to
Good.
people, and they're kind of stunned by it. They're like, "Wow, it's still like magic. It's more like it's less creepy
Yeah.
and it's more magical."
Well, that's kind of the uncanny. Some like
Yeah.
it's
Go ahead.
like wow, but do you use it then?
Do they use it? That's the big question. And people, I mean, the uptake it's increasing as we speak, right? And
Mhm.
I think part of that for me, it's more of the imagination gap, right?
Yeah.
It's, oh, I have my work over here, and we have this cool mural thing. Now Mural has AI, and it's like I have to reimagine how my
Yeah.
work gets into Mural, and then how my work in Mural is now interacting with AI.
Mhm.
So I think we're still seeing people just kind of connect those synaptic gaps in their mind to be able to imagine a better way of working or whatever their desire is.
Yeah, and I think that kind of gets to like what I was saying before. You have like two things to think about now. You have AI,
Okay.
generative AI, how to use it
Yeah.
well, and then also how to integrate it, how to use it visually.
How
and
to
how
use
to
a visual.
make visual. So what do you think would be good strategies to get over that imagination gap?
Yeah, I think one of the strategies that I recommend is start small and even start personal. So just think about planning your to-dos for the day. Try it out in Mural, and you interact with it with AI or something even personal, like if you're planning your vacation or just
Hmm.
something personal that's not necessarily in the critical path of a project that you're working on, right? And I'll say it the other way around. If you're working on in the critical path of a project, might not be the time to start experimenting with
Mhm.
things, right? It's like, okay, so just start small so that you can get comfortable with the perceived either creepiness or magicalness of AI in general, however you're perceiving that, but also then the kind of the motion. Oh, I have to cut and paste from here and go in here and just get the habit almost. It's like
Mhm.
just start to and just do one thing, just so and that's how habits get built, right? You
Sure.
don't look at 12 different things and make all of them a habit. You start with one with one thing is like we're going to make that a habit. At the end of every meeting, take the content that you added to a mural board, assuming you're taking notes, and do a summary of it,
Mhm.
right? Just try that. And the next week, do some clustering on it or something like that. If you're in the middle of a brainstorming session, think of AI as another participant, right? So I have five
Mhm.
people in the session. Well, no, I got six actually, because I can ask AI to generate content for me. Just do one of those things at a time until you make habit. And I think that's the way you bridge that imagination gap. And which is if I just summarize that, it's you have to experience it, right?
Mhm.
Because you and I can talk theoretically about this imagination gap, and people at home are probably listening and going, "Yeah, I understand that." But to overcome it, you need to experience
Yeah,
it,
absolutely.
and you need to see the benefit from it. So just start small, pick one habit, see the benefit from it, and go from there.
Excellent. As we wrap up, what do you think will be the future of generative AI at Mural, internally and
Mural.
externally?
You mean like within our solution?
Within your internally, what we talked about in the first half of the conversation,
Internally.
and
Yeah.
externally within your solution.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would imagine on the product side, on the development side of things, that it would accelerate our
Mhm.
ability to generate new code. I mean, we're software, right? We have more people than not are generating software code
Sure.
right now, and obviously AI can help with that. I think in the legal field as well too, we have a big sales team with sales assisted deals that often have a big legal component with redlining. There's all kinds of negotiations. I think AI can help with that as well as helping with our legal team. I know but also with probably with collaboration as well too.
Hmm.
I mentioned this idea that Slack can summarize conversations that are happening all over the Slack sphere, Slackverse. Is that a word? Slackverse. So there's a ton of conversations happening right now in real time, and we span many time zones as a company as well too. We even have people in Australia and things like that, and just the ability to have more transparency
Mhm.
across that distributed group of people, but also helping make connections and helping people collaborate better by finding who's the best person to ask about this and things like
Mhm.
that, right? So I think there's yeah, still as a company, there's still a long way that we have to go, and of course, Gen AI is just getting started too. So
Yeah,
it's really hard to make any future prediction about AI these days
sure.
because
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jim. This was very helpful. I
okay,
really appreciate you sharing your expertise.
sure. I hope it was helpful for you.
It was. And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision
Yeah.
Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show and helps us improve the show.